Hi everyone, my name is Dee Dee and I am the VP of Homeowner Services for Bend-Redmond Habitat for Humanity. Thank you for taking a little bit of time today to learn a little bit more about our affordable home ownership program. We're going to start by exploring the basic habitat program requirements, and then we'll talk a little bit more about our homes and our future builds. But even if you feel like after listening to the video today that you don't qualify, we still want to work with you, and there's no charge to that. We want to work with you as a client to help get you mortgage ready and help you understand what it takes to qualify for a home loan, even if that's with Habitat or if it's with another affordable homeownership purchase program. So we'll share everything that we know with you and help you explore something else that might also be out there that might work for you. So our goal is to help you get ready for our next application cycle should you want to apply for Habitat, and I'll share a little bit more about that at the end of the video. Okay, so first I want to make sure that you have seen our program flyer and the income guidelines that are on that flyer for the household size. So if you haven't, go ahead and pause the video, and on the same web page you should be able to click the link and look at our income guidelines and make sure that you're a fit within that household size income guide range. So if not, don't worry, we can still work with you. We might want to still meet as a client and talk about what it would take to have you qualify, maybe talk about some of the income sources, and make sure that we're including everything that needs to be included for the income guidelines. So we want to look at our 3 areas of requirement next. So we're going to go a little bit through what need and ability to pay and willingness to partner means next. Okay, what do we mean when we talk about need? Well, need can be a family just like yours. You have a need for either improved housing conditions. Maybe you have a need because your housing costs right now are high compared to your household income. We see that a lot in Bend. We see the rising cost of rent both in Bend and Redmond, and or you're priced out of the market. Maybe you've already gone to a lender and you've been pre-qualified for a loan and you just can't find one in your price range. So we see that as need here in Deschutes County. Okay, so need also, this is a little different angle of looking at it in a graphic way. This is a nice chart that was prepared by the city of Bend. If you look to the far left, you'll see the area median income, and that's known as a percentage. It changes every year and is released by Housing and Urban Development, or HUD. And then on the far right, you can see if you are earning a certain income level, then this is the rent that you could afford, or the home price that you can afford. So go down on the far left and you can see the Habitat income range down there, 80% and below. And so depending on what type of a job you have or type of jobs you have, we can move over and see the rent and or the home price. So if we're looking at that home price, say you earn 60% of the area median income, about $45,000, $46,000 annually, you might qualify for a home loan of $199,000. So what we're seeing is they're not available in Bend or Redmond. Those homes are snagged up. They're bought by cash buyers if they are available. It's more and more challenging, and we understand that. So big part of that need is really just not being able to find a home in your price range. So it's also important to note that we work with, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of our funding sources, but we work with the cities of Bend and Redmond on some of our grants and loans. And the housing councils, the affordable housing committees, are really prioritizing giving funding to those affordable builders that are building higher density homes. So that means homes like townhomes or attached home versus detached homes. So you'll see cottage communities, so smaller homes under 1,100 square feet. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into the types of homes that we're building in the future too. Ability to pay. We'll go through these bullets and talk a little bit about them, and you may still have some questions which you might want to jot down some notes as you go through this presentation. And then when we meet one-on-one as a client, we can answer those specific questions for you. But even though Habitat has its own guidelines here, it's also good to know that we work with an outside lender called the Oregon Residential Loan Program, Oregon Bond Residential Loan Program. And they also have requirements for being a first-time home buyer. A lot of our requirements are very similar. One of the Habitat requirements, though, is that you must live or work in Deschutes County in order to apply for the program in Bend. So you are in Bend or Redmond, sorry. You are, if you live in Bend but work in Redmond, you're eligible to apply for the housing in either community. If you only live in Bend, then you'll be applying to the Bend housing program when those applications become open. We usually open those up in both communities at least once a year, sometimes twice. You need to have proof of legal residency. So at least the income earning household person that's qualified within the income range needs to have legal residency. Not everyone in the home has to have legal residency, but the person who's going to qualify for the loan needs to. Minimum gross household income of $33,000, and then we go up to 75% AMI. Our income guidelines and some of the funders we work with require that we serve families and households or individuals under 80% of the area median income. So if we get you into the program at 75% AMI, there's a lot of times a risk that you could get a raise, your income could increase, and we can't have it increase over 80% before we sell you the home, or we're out of compliance with our funding. Now it can increase after you get in the home, and that's okay. And we don't ever have to go back and check on that. But while you're in the program and before you purchase your home, it has to be under 75 or 80% of the area median income. So we like to top it at 75, just so we have a little bit of wiggle room while you're in the program. You need to show that you have 2 years of a steady source of income in the same industry is usually what lenders are looking at. And then if you're self-employed, we want to see 3 years of your tax returns. And so you want to show 3 years of Schedule C qualified income. And there can be some questions about that we can talk about during the client intake one-on-one meetings as well. You need to have a low monthly debt to income ratio. And if that's not something that you're used to calculating, we're going to help you through that. So your monthly debt needs to be below 12% of your monthly income. And then you need to have a minimum FICO credit score of 620. 620 or above. And FICO is a score that is used when you're qualifying for home loans, and it's different than what shows on Credit Karma. So just keep that in mind. There's going to be some differences in those numbers. So we'll want to work with you on increasing your credit score if it's not quite there yet. And then if you have a bankruptcy, it needs to be 4 years from the discharge date or 5 years from a short sale. Those are some conventional lending guidelines as well as for the Oregon Bond Program. So we can look at that together as well. And that will, if you're at least 4 to 5 years there, you'll still be considered a first-time home buyer. 3 years if you have owned a home in the past. If it's been 3 years since you've owned that home, you can still be considered a first-time home buyer. You also need to have the ability to save $2,000 for closing costs. So we like to try to get you in a match savings program with our partners at Neighbor Impact, but if that doesn't happen, if you don't qualify, or if there's not room to be accepted into that program, then we at least have you put $2,000 towards your closing costs. And then if you have more than $20,000 in assets, you might have to apply a certain percentage of your liquid assets as a down payment on the home. So just because you have $20,000 or more in liquid assets doesn't disqualify you from our program. So we have a separate video that if that applies to you, you want to watch that video. It breaks down how much, if any, that will need to be put as a down payment towards your Habitat home. And if you have, if you're in a separation, We're going to want to see the separation agreement to be able to apply for the home, or have a divorce decree if that's applicable. So those are some of the basic eligibility, ability to pay guidelines. So once we get through looking at some of those ability to pay guidelines, we're also going to take and calculate 33% of your gross monthly income, and that will become what is your mortgage payment. So even if your sales price is different, and we'll go into that in more detail in the second video, but what you need to know now is that 33% of your gross income is going to be your affordable monthly house payment, and that's going to include your principal, which is the house payment, your interest, which is a below market interest rate loan through the Oregon Loan Bond Program, your property taxes, your homeowner's insurance, any HOA and land lease fees. All of that rolled in together, 33% of your gross income then becomes your housing cost. So I mentioned a little bit earlier about your debt to income ratio, and this is something that we can help you calculate together one-on-one, but if you want to do this on your own, your debt to income ratio is all of your recurring monthly debt together. So those are things like a car loan, any student loans. If it shows on your credit report, a lender is going to count that as your debt, and you use your monthly, so credit card payments, you use your monthly minimum. So even if you are required to pay $25 on that credit card, but you pay $50 every month, to calculate your debt to income ratio, you just want to use that minimum payment. So lump all of those together and then divide it by your gross monthly income. So your gross income is income before taxes are taken out. And then you multiply it times 100 and you'll get a percentage. So we want that percentage to be below 12%. And again, we'll work on helping you figure that out together. Or you can do that on your own and work at decreasing your debt if that's what you need to do. I think the thing that happens for a lot of people is they get into, car loan lenders will lend you differently than a home loan lenders will. So lots of folks see their debt to income ratio jump up when they have a really high car loan. And so when you add your other monthly debts to that, it can sometimes bump your debt to income ratio to a range that's too high for us to be able to work with you. So we'll work at ways to say, how can we decrease that debt? What do we need to do to either increase your income so that that debt to income ratio comes down? So there's a number of different things we can look at there. Part of our eligibility to pay guidelines also include savings for closing costs. And I mentioned that we want you to save at least $2,000 towards your closing costs. Hopefully, we can get you into the match savings program with our partners at Neighbor Impact. And they, if you can get into this program, have a 3-to-1 match. So it's called an IDA account, an individual development account. It's open to the public. It's on a lottery-based system, so you could reach out to Neighbor Impact and try to sign up for that today and see if you get in on a lottery. If you are accepted into the Habitat program, they try to reserve some spots for our Habitat applicants, but it is that 3-to-1 match, and we put that total match towards the closing costs. So we'll talk a little bit about what closing costs can be. Anything like homeowners insurance, you pay for that up front. Fees like attorney fees, title search fees, title insurance, taxes and other lender costs. So they really can, it can add up. It can be a percentage of your sales price. So at a minimum, there is usually about $8,000 of closing costs that we see in our program. And most times they're higher, but Habitat will subsidize and take the rest of those closing costs. And we'll talk about that in the second video too, and how the loans are structured. Like I said earlier, if you do have net assets over, liquid assets over $20,000 in value, then we have a formula where we will determine if you need to apply for a portion of those applied to a down payment for your Habitat home. Our third qualification that we look at is willingness to partner. And we'll talk about this over the next couple of slides, but it's an important part of our program, and we really look at each home buyer as a partner, so that's why we call them partner families once you're accepted into the program. And it's your commitment to persevere through this process and partner with us on volunteerism and assisting together as we build your home and prepare you for home ownership. So sweat equity, also known as volunteering, is broken down by the number of adults in your household. So if it's a 2-adult household and anyone over 18 years of age is considered an adult, they will have to complete 150 hours of volunteer sweat equity. And those hours are broken down by the following. So Restore, our Restore 35 hours, construction site would be 40 hours, and then Habitat Event is 50 hours. Now there is 50 hours already reserved for the education classes and workshops that we have you attend during the year that you're in the program. And then you'll have 100 hours donated by family and friends. And if that's challenged to you, then we also have lots of volunteers who are regulars that like to donate their hours towards families that are in the program. And the other part of the sweat equity and willingness to partner is that you understand that we're not a private home builder. We try to build as efficiently as possible, so putting any change orders in on the homes are just makes it more challenging for us to stay on schedule. Construction costs are extremely high right now, so we're doing all we can to streamline and budget our process as well. The other thing you need to understand and accept is the location of the home that is assigned to you. So sometimes you'll come into the program and you're applying for a home within a certain housing development. That's nice because then you get to know where your home will be, but that's not always the case. So sometimes we might buy back a home, and then the next buyer-ready family, appropriate sized family based on the number of bedrooms, would be placed in that home. You would get the opportunity to purchase that home. Right now we're building in different communities, and so you'll likely know what house or community that you're applying for. You might not know the exact unit, right? So you'll know that when you're about 75% of the way through the program. One of the other willingness to partner pieces is that you understand that you are in a partnership with Habitat, that you are a representative of Habitat in our community. So our brand and our mission is strong, and we want you to continue to support that mission. And so part of your willingness to partner is understanding these features and qualifications. Okay, let's talk a little bit about our Habitat homes and our future builds. I think that what is most important to know is that although it might be tempting to ask for change requests, or hey, I found this really great clawfoot bathtub at the Restore, can you install this in my home? We're going to say no on that request, only because we're trying to keep the build process moving, and those kinds of change orders can be pretty costly, and that's what you can do when you have a private home builder. But just know that when you move into your Habitat home, you can make those kinds of changes post-purchase. One way to think about it is that you're buying a home on the open market, you've gone out with a realtor, you've looked at these homes, and you're buying that home as is, and making those changes after you move into the home. Colors of the home, painting the walls of the bedrooms, those are the kinds of things that you can do. Major changes will need to be run through Habitat first, but we'll talk about that more in the second video as well. I think it's important to keep in mind that we're subsidizing. Habitat is fundraising for at least $100,000 or more on each of the home loans that we sell to families. So we can work together in this process to keep it as smooth and as and timely and as efficient as possible. That helps cut down the costs. Okay, so some of the habitat housing options that we look at, I mentioned earlier that the funding sources that we work with are pushing towards higher density builds. So things like townhomes, duplexes, triplexes, those are considered a multifamily residential unit. And might be that it's 1 to 3 bedrooms. Right now we're building mostly 2 and 3 bedroom homes. We just don't have the properties yet to build those 3 and 4 bedroom homes on, although that's something that we're always working on. Higher density builds include things like cottage communities. So those are 600 to 1100 square foot homes. Again, those can be 1 to 3 bedroom. And cottage communities have a common usable space. So that might mean a center landscaped or center space that the homes face in towards. And so we're still building both higher density duplex, triplex, townhouse models, as well as cottage communities. So you'll want to look specifically to our website for the upcoming builds and click on those links so you can see some preliminary house plans for what's coming up in the future. But the city of Bend and Redmond and the state of Oregon is giving more grants and loans to those builders that are building higher density. So that's kind of what helps push that process of what's available and what those builds are going to look like. So as I mentioned, the state of Oregon is also supporting higher density building and the affordable housing crisis. And you can Google and look up a little more about Oregon statewide housing plan. And particularly, the state has developed a program called LIFT, and that stands for Local Innovation and Fast Track. And so funding is being applied to builders that are building on permanent housing, so permanent affordable housing such as a land lease. And so that's what Bend-Redmond Habitat has been using some of that LIFT funding to build homes on a land lease. And so in the next couple of years, you'll see that that is what 99% of our builds are. And we'll talk a little bit more about what a land lease is next and some of the benefits of a land lease as well. But it means more funding applied towards building affordable housing, and along with the state and our local resources, that helps us build more affordable housing. Okay, so what is a land lease model? A land lease is where Habitat or another entity owns the land and the homeowner pays an affordable monthly lease fee. In our case, we're looking at a lease fee of $20 or less, and know that that is under your 33% affordability. So that lease fee is going to be included in with your house payment, your property tax payment, your homeowner's insurance, your maybe an HOA fee. All of that together is going to be less than 33% of your gross income. So think about it as one way of getting into the affordable housing market. It's a 99-year lease, so you'll own the home, you just don't own the land under the home. There's often reduced property taxes for land lease models. It's important to know that there are resale restrictions. So your first mortgage with Habitat is a 30-year loan, and so there's limited there's restrictions on what you can do. It has to be homeowner occupied. We have to sell it to someone who is below 80% of the area median income for the household size, whether that's 1 person or 3 people or 4 people. And then there is, some requirements such as it needs to be your primary residence. You can't rent it out. There's some home maintenance and upkeep requirements. Of course, HOAs will require that. And so we'll talk a little bit more about those restrictions in the second video as well. And we'll talk a little bit about our shared equity model. And a lot of folks ask, can I sell the house and can I sell it on the open market? So the second video will talk about Habitat's right of first offer. So if you were to want to sell your home, Habitat has the right to buy that home back first, but we have a shared equity agreement where If you're in the home for more than 12 years, it would cost Habitat more to buy that home back. You've been in it, earned a little bit more equity in the home, and we would give you those numbers and show you what that looks like. If Habitat chooses not to buy it back, it's yours to sell on the open market. You just have to pay off any other loans that might be on that home. So again, second video, we'll break that down, the loan structure down in more detail. Okay, next steps. Did you feel like you generally met the eligibility requirements and you want to move forward? Even if you feel like, oh, my credit score is not quite 620, go ahead and take and download the customer intake form so that we can start looking at that together. Do you meet the income guidelines? We'll just start looking at your mortgage readiness for the next application cycle. Maybe you need a little longer, and we want to start working together on what it would take to increase your credit score. Either way, we would love to work with you and give you any of the other resources that we know that might help you in your path to homeownership. What we'll do once we get your customer intake form, it will also require that you turn in some sort of income verification, say the last pay stub or two. We do use, if you're on a fixed income, we can look at those income sources as well. We just don't use unemployment to qualify you. So we can still work with you as a client. I think it's important to note that the customer intake form doesn't lock you into anything. It's not an application for our program. Those happen once or twice a year. But this does gives us permission to do a soft credit pull with you. That next level we're going to send you a link once you turn in that customer intake form, and you're going to go plug in your name. It's very basic and easy to do. A soft credit pull is only from one bureau, so it's not going to take a hit on your credit score. It's not like a hard pull, but it does give us a score. It does give us some of the basic information so that we can start looking at your debt to income ratio and goals that we might need to make you more mortgage ready, whether that's with us or with any other program. So then we'll set up a one-on-one session with you, what we call that a client mortgage counseling session. And that can be through Zoom, that might be in person. It really depends on the comfort level and where we're at and how things are looking. But one way or the other, we will meet with you individually and start looking at housing specific goals. So you can see we have the customer intake form link. It's in a couple of spots on our website, and if that's something that you can download and print to fill in and return to us, then go ahead and do that, or you can come into our office, and we also have copies in the office in the Bend Restore admin side of the building. We've also got a section on our website of frequently asked questions that you can go to, and that might also help with some of the questions that others have asked that are similar to what you're going through right now. There's also a link for land leases, and so there's a Q&A document on land leases that you can get and read through, and that would be an important one to look at as well. So thank you for listening in today. As I mentioned, check out the second informational video. We'll go into Habitat loans in a little bit more detail. And if you have any questions, feel free to email homeownership@brhabitat.org, and myself and my coworker look forward to working with you.